All right, Ike. Well, tonight we've got a very special episode. We're trying out something a little new. We're having our very good friends, Dan and Ivan, from everyone's favorite Land Rover podcast, certainly my favorite Land Rover podcast, the RoverTalk, to talk a little bit about the Land Rover market, such as it is. What Land Rovers have sold this year that were interesting, what's coming up in the market, all that sort of business. We don't really cover that much. And I thought, what better way to start to sort of wind up the year here as we get into our end of year festivities than to do a little chat about the market. So do you have your favorite Land Rover sale of the year picked out?
Oh, I absolutely do. Yeah, this is going to be a great podcast mashup. This is going to be like the Harlem Globetrotters meet Scooby-Doo. It's going to be great. It's going to be great.
We're laying the foundation, building the Land Rover cinematic universe, podcast universe. That's going to be great.
There you go.
Next thing, this is the Iron Man of Land Rover podcasts here. That everything it's straight to it's a straight to crossover summer blockbusters from here for sure.
Yeah, we're going to take over all the Land Rover podcasts. We're going to get their listeners familiar with us, and then we're just going to absorb them all.
Just be one big podcast that nobody listens to. So, all right. Well, without further ado, let's throw some 90 weight in the old interview machine, and we'll get Ivan and Dan in here.
Let's get cracking.
All right. So we are joined by our good friends and fellow Land Rover podcasters, Dan and Ivan from RoverTalk. Probably my favorite Land Rover podcast, seeing as ours is easily my third, fourth, maybe even fifth favorite Land Rover podcast. And seeing as there's only three, you guys are definitely my favorite Land Rover podcast. No shade at John and the center steer. I also love that. But really enjoy listening to you guys and love having you guys on the show. We here, as we start to wrap up the year, in chatting back and forth with Ivan earlier in the week here, thought it might be interesting to do a little Land Rover marketplace wrap-up. And as you guys certainly are the leading authority on all things Land Rovers being bought, sold, traded, smuggled, what have you, we thought, who better to come on the show and chat a little bit about that. So I've challenged everyone to think back over this year of 2022 and find your favorite or your most unique or what have you Land Rover that sold on the internet. So Ivan, maybe we'll start with you. First of all, welcome. And what is your top pick for interesting Land Rover sold this year?
Thank you. It's always fun to be with you guys. So my top pick is going to be a little bit controversial, and I know it is. But my top pick was a 2000 Range Rover 4.6 HSE, the P38, that had only 10,000 miles on it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So this car was sold initially on Bring a Trailer the first time around because it had a couple of rounds. Bidding closed at $80,500 and something dollars. And as Dan was telling me just a minute ago, because I didn't read through all the comments on the second auction, apparently the bidder did not go through, or the buyer did not go through because there was a scratch on the bumper.
Well, I mean, that is a lot of money for a car that needs head gaskets.
It needs a head gasket already. It does have 10,000 miles. What was a P38 new? I mean, that's got to be pretty close to the retail price of that car.
Well, I'd have to spec it out, but pretty much you were in the 70 to 75 range, brand new.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So little bit adjusted to slightly for inflation, but still, wow, that's close. Amazing.
But wait a second. Now, the best part is that the scratch that impeded the sale going through,
right?
Then it went back on to Bring a Trailer, and it was bid up to only $44,000. And it remained
that seller. It's probably like,
oh no, that's so what you're saying is that is a $36,000 scratch on the bumper.
That's a $36,000 scratch. Yes.
Wow.
And the thing about that listing is the first time it sold, it wasn't sold during that. We went through this period this year at the beginning of the year where everybody had like printed money and people were paying like insane amounts for like stuff that wasn't, actually worth it. And this had actually sold when we had already come out of that peak. So it was interesting to see that it had still like hit 80,000. But then, as we know, it went unsold, but
didn't quite make it.
So what you're saying is there's still an opportunity to purchase this car.
There's an opportunity,
100%,
and I'm sure that you could get like a $10,000 discount for that scratch, and I'm sure that the seller would be happy to accept $70,500 instead of $80,000.
I'll bet. So, and I bet, man, $9-10 grand, you could probably get that bumper scratch fixed pretty easily. That's a lot of money to work
with. It's impossible. You can't replace original paint.
Yeah, exactly.
It's true.
There you go.
Once it's scratched. You're right. You're right. Wow. There was a certain number of those, I'm sure, that came with bumper scratches from the factory. So it could have been original to the car. It could have been original.
Yeah, you never know.
Like 95% of the examples.
Yeah.
Fascinating that it had that big swing. And I guess that, you need at least two people that agree that the car 100%. Is a certain value. Yeah. Otherwise, right. You can't achieve those high prices. So, for a car like that, its sole value is that it has 10,000 miles, and I don't know how they substantiate that. I'm sure it's a really nice example, but it's also sort of a polarizing model. Some people really like those cars, and then other people are like, maybe think it's reminiscent of a La Forza.
Yeah. Yes. The issue with this one is that it was black. So even to me, a black P38 is like, there's nothing special there. So you really
it's a pretty pedestrian.
Yeah. $10,000 for a car that you literally cannot drive.
Yeah. You like the Vitesse yellow one?
Oh, I actually owned one of those.
Yeah.
You did? I did. It was a very short ownership, but it was, it kind of ran. It ran for about a week, and then I had to spend a few $1,000s getting some electrical. It's just
electrical with the P38.
I feel like that's factory spec. Runs for a week.
Yeah, that's right.
That's pretty good.
Runs for about a week.
Now those yellow cars, they have a black interior with yellow piping, right?
Yeah,
they do.
Yeah, the Batiste had the black with the yellow piping.
And they also had a bumper bar, a bull bar in the front, and some other stuff. And they were a special. You could either get the Vitesse edition in yellow or in red. Those are all the options you had. Yeah. And everybody says that they only made 250, and we all know that Land Rover never have the capacity to count. So who knows?
Yeah. Oh no, they have no idea.
Could have been 25,000.
Could be. They don't know. They have no idea. Yeah. They did. Some were made at some point. People bought them.
Yeah. Anyway, I picked that one because I think that the P38, and I was in between that one and a different model that we'll discuss if we have a little bit more time. But I think P38s are starting to grow into themselves, and they're still kind of a wreck, but I think they're really cool.
Yeah. No, and you know what? And we've said this before. The people who like the P38 are really dyed in the wool. Like they love the P38. It is, it's the only Range Rover they love. They don't like the new ones. It's they're an interesting breed, and more power to them, and hopefully eventually all their cars are worth $80,000, which is fun. How much do you think that's reminiscent of, or rather is a symptom of this sort of frenzied bring a trailer, sort of market of the early part of this year, and how much of it is just sort of the right couple of people in the room at the right time?
Well, I think in this case it was the right couple of people, because this sold at the end of the year, at the end of last year. I don't think this one. I think this one was like what you said before, or like I was saying, it's the 10,000 miles that you're paying for. That's where I think this one is. Yeah,
I think there's a little more to it than that, and one of those things is that those cars are of that era are starting to be collectible. So you're starting to get 90s cars pick up in collectability. People, are finding unusually nice examples of those vehicles. But let's face it, it's really a rare thing to have a good P38 that runs well and drives well. And it's a difficult car to restore. So it's not like there's a bunch of people out there doing a lot of restoration work on a 4.6 HSA. So if you are one of those dyed in the wool, self-flagellating Range Rover P38 fans, then that's what you're stuck with, either finding one of these exceptionally nice examples. Unlikely that you're going to restore that car. I don't know what parts availability is like for all the interior pieces of a P38, but I suspect it's pretty sparse.
I mean, that's the thing with the B-38. It's either a really, really good one or nothing, because they just didn't last. It's kind of like
there's no middle.
It's kind of like the early L322s. They just kind of fall apart as they go on, and the P-38 just, people, if they took care of them, they just rode them to death, and
it really pioneered the falling apart after about 5 years of use.
Yeah,
it set the standard. Yeah.
The other thing, like I've said too, is that I don't think these cars are old enough to be restored yet. So they're not, they're not at that point where people really value what they are or what they were at one point in time and are really willing to put the money into restoring. They're just not old enough for that.
Right.
So like you said, I don't think anybody's restoring. I think people are still kind of repairing or trying to get, or repairing the fuse box, putting new fuse boxes in and stuff like that have.
Right. They're still just trying to push it through. Like, just give us another year. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, Ike, what was your pick for this year?
I'm going to have to go with the Forest Rover that sold earlier this year. There are not too many of those cars, and it's kind of like a exceptionally zany, weird configuration that Land Rover, I think they made 9 or 12 of them. 9 maybe?
Yeah.
They made about 9 of those cars. And so it was fascinating to me, one, because I have one of those examples. And the other the other reason is it's just, you don't see those come up for sale too often. And it was a nice example with a kind of a known history. All the histories of all those cars are known because there's so few of them. But it brought, I want to say, 190,000 pounds. So at the exchange rate of that time, I think it was about $250,000 at that time, I think is what that sold for.
And where was that?
It was cool. It was an auction house in the UK. I don't remember exactly which one, but it sold online. And it was probably in the first half of 22. So it it was a cool truck. And there's nothing cooler than seeing a factory Land Rover with 48-inch tires on it. There's not too many of those, and it's just kind of a quirky example, but strong money for a unusual car.
Would you consider that like their take on like the Power Wagon? Like, is it like in that sort of vein of, or did it not?
Land Rover did make a vehicle that was their take on a Power Wagon, and it was referred to as the 129-inch pip, and that was sort of a competitor or an idea prototype for a competitor to the Power Wagon. And so those vehicles were more built to, a heavy utility or heavy industry sort of standpoint. They had 9 or 1,116 tires on them. So they're quite a bit bigger, both in width and length, than a standard 109 pickup. And they experimented with a number of different diesels, including like a Perkins 6-cylinder turbocharged diesel. And those were built in the mid 60s when the flat fender Power Wagons were still being built, the W series Power Wagons. So those are probably the ones that you're familiar with, the classic, sort of military-esque flat fender style with the metal slat grille. They made those up into the 70s, and Land Rover at one time thought, look, we're getting a lot of interested customers from the Middle East. We're selling them Land Rovers. They're also buying Power Wagons from Dodge, to do a lot of this oiler exploration. So they did build a truck that was a prototype sort of competitor to the Power Wagon, a bigger, heavier vehicle than the standard Land Rover. But the Forest Rover was really for specialty customers, forestry services. It was sort of meant with much, much, much bigger tires, 48-inch versus 36-inch. So a foot taller than even a Power Wagon tire were these Forest Rovers. And they were meant to like crawl over down timber and stuff. And they were built by a company, Roadless Traction. And Roadless Traction, they designed 4-wheel drive conversions for tractors. So that was kind of the impetus for doing a Land Rover conversion, making an exceptionally capable Land Rover that had, wider axles and huge tires and, really had a cross-country capability that the standard Land Rover didn't. Nothing really roadworthy would have that sort of capability that something on 48-inch tires would. But so it was a factory approved conversion, but they made very few of them. There just weren't that many specialty customers that were clamoring for this sort of car that, had the cross country capability, but maybe wasn't a forestry tractor, like couldn't, really be a log skidder because it wasn't heavy enough or didn't have, I wasn't built strong enough to be a log skidder. So it was kind of this weird, it was high mobility Land Rover, but it wasn't a big industrial tractor. So they made them in limited numbers and only for a short period of time. But from a historical perspective, it's just a very striking vehicle. You see this vehicle and it's enormous and crazy and just weird looking. Yeah, super neat.
Am I right, Ike, that like the Highlander, if one Forest Rover owner meets another, you have to duel to the death to absorb their power? Is that
I think they started out with like 100 examples and there's only 9 left.
Yeah, there's only 9 left now. Yeah, eventually there will only be one complete Forest Rover, as there's only enough parts now for one working Forest Rover. So yeah.
Interestingly, the parts scenario for the Forest Rover is a fascinating one. They were built from sort of forklift parts.
Yeah, forklift parts, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So the axles are like a heavy duty forklift. Kirkstall Forge is the company that made the axles for the Forest Rover. Contrary to a lot of people who think they were like Studebaker military truck axles, they were made by this company, Kirkstall Forge, which is kind of an obscure one. They started out in the like Middle Ages making like anvils and cart axles and all this stuff. So this company had been around for like literally like 900 years. It was like a monastery for a while. They were mining. And then eventually it got bought out by the Dana Corporation in the 90s and sort of dissolved. But there for a while, they made forklift axles and the center section or the differential was particular to those. And then they sort of made wider special axles for the Land Rover applications. But it's a weird, just such an obscure Land Rover, but it's interesting to see one come up for sale. You might wait 20 years and not see one come up for sale. So,
well, that being said, do you think just under 200 was a fair price? Like, did you think it was going to sell for more? Like,
I thought it would sell for less, to be honest. I don't know how many people want one of those. It's probably more. It's apparently more now than wanted them originally, but it's just it's an odd thing. And what do you use it for? You must have like a big property or something to drive it around on, or have it part of a permanent collection somewhere, just as an obscure vehicle. So it's not a one for the pedestrian Land Rover collector. It's a real, you got to be a real hardcore enthusiast to A, afford it, and B, house it and keep it and use it.
And beside yours, Ike, here in the United States, is there another one here in the US? I know there's 2 you can go and see in the UK. You could go and see one, the Dunsfold collection, or you could see the British Motor Heritage Museum. But is there another one here?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know of another one here in the U.S. As far as I know, there was only ever one sent here, and it ended up in the Canadian Forestry Service. So there's rumors that another one was built from parts here in the U.S., but it hasn't. It was built
like a Sasquatch. There's another one that's seen. There's some blurry photos with it driving slowly in the background. You're not just some video. It's out of focus. You don't know. Yeah,
you hear about sightings, but no, to my knowledge, there is not another one.
You just hear it in the woods slowly clinking along. You're like, what is that?
There's a collector in South America that has one. There's one in Scotland. There's Phil's at the Dunsfold Land Rover Museum. There's this one that came up for sale. There's one that was scrapped. I mean, they're all pretty much known where they went and what they are. So everybody knows exactly who has what.
The ironic thing is, I think there's more running Forest Rovers than there are North American Freelanders. So, I'm just saying. I think there's something. Something to that. Well, and at that, Dan, awesome. What was your pick this year?
So mine actually is kind of predictable. There was a 1993 Campbell Trophy Defender that sold on Bring a Trailer that was authenticated. It actually ran in races, has a lot of provenance to it. So, we all love Land Rovers. And so, as a kid, that's kind of what we were all drawn to. So, whenever a legitimate Campbell Trophy comes up, I get pretty excited. And, this one closed out at almost 130 grand. I almost thought it was going to go for a little bit more, but it had some alterations over the years, which in my opinion, kind of takes away from, obviously the history and the bumps and bruises that one expects. It had a rollover, and then that was repaired, but you expect the rollover, in the Camel Trophy.
Oh yeah, if they haven't been rolled, then you don't have a good one.
Then it wasn't actually in a Camel Trophy, and of course it has. It's a 93, so it had the 200, which, as you both know, is my favorite Land Rover engine. So, to me, that was probably my favorite pick this year. There were a couple other ones that I thought were pretty hilarious, but I think this one was.
Do you know off the top of your mind what year, where the 93 Camel Trophy was held?
So in 93, it was in Sabah, Malaysia.
Oh, I've been there many times.
Yeah. That's actually where my Discovery is from. I almost bought that car before it went on Brig a Trailer, that 110, but ultimately
this one.
Yeah, I know the seller quite well, and I almost bought it a couple of times, and he sort of said, okay, well, I'm going to put it online. So if you don't want it, then you got to let me know. And I said, no, I don't think so, because it's a matching car to my Discovery. But yeah, unfortunately, too much money spent on the stupid Freelander. So I just couldn't.
Do you regret not buying it now that you've seen it sell?
I regret not buying anything that I've ever wanted, but I don't know. I actually, what? Funny enough, I didn't buy it because Ike had found a particularly incredible, not a 6-cylinder.
It's my fault.
It's his what we lovingly refer to as Ted. My 109, not a 6-cylinder, and so I honestly think that I'll use that car and do quite a bit more, and it is in a sense, as a lot of my cars are North American spec cars. It's if I guess there's a theme to anything that I collect, I guess it's NADA cars. And so, had to be one or the other. And I've already got one Camel Trophy truck, and I do want a Defender eventually. But there's also something like not sporting about having somebody calling you and saying it's already here in the United States, and I can just send it to you. It's no big deal. It's quite something different if you have to find it in a barn in southern France and
right.
to get it over here. There's so it's I guess maybe it's not as it wasn't as sporting of a hunt maybe or something, but yeah, no, it's an incredible car, and I agree with you, Dan. I think anytime you see a Camel Trophy truck, a real one on sale anywhere, it's always exciting, and you get to sort of see the dialogue of usually the folks that participated in that year's event will come and they'll comment, and they'll it's just kind of a neat thing to watch, right? It's and it's fun, and I've said before that for me the Camel Trophy here in Canada was something we couldn't compete in. We didn't sell Camel cigarettes, so no Camel Trophy for Canada. So it was never something I was going to be able to do growing up, but it was something that you sort of aspire to, right? And what a neat event, and having one and sitting inside of it and all of that sort of stuff. I sort of liken it to my wife Liza went to space camp. Obviously, she's not going to be an astronaut. She's a little bit too short to fly a fighter jet in Canada, and so that means you're pretty much out of the running to be an astronaut. But for me, the Camel Trophy truck is a little bit of it's a little bit of my space camp, right? It's been there. It's seen the mud. It's had the real folks in it, and so it's just a pretty neat thing to have and to share. Now, of course,
I aspire to have a Camel Trophy vehicle.
Yes, what's that one?
There's only one that I want, though, and it was the one that burned down when the journalist was making a grilled cheese inside of it.
Yeah, I think that's the one to get. There's a great picture of that one in Dimbleby's book of the burned out Camel Trophy truck.
I think you need to share a little bit more about that, because that I don't know if that's as well known as
I don't remember what year it was. What year was that, Ike?
I don't remember what year it was either. I just remember hearing that a journalist burned one of them down while he was making a grilled cheese inside the car.
A grilled cheese sandwich in the back seat, I think, right? And set the upholstery on fire. And because of the upholstery fire, the entire car caught fire and burned to the ground. Yeah. So I imagine that was left in whatever They just left it, they just abandoned it.
It's probably
but
still there.
There was, there's some pretty hilarious, there's some pretty, Bob Ives and those folks that were around the event for so many years, like have such great stories of, of all of the crazy things that, these essentially amateur drivers, right? Like these folks weren't, they're not professional off-road drivers. And so all kinds of, and I mean, I think that, the British teams, the American teams, Germans, they had a fairly rigorous competition locally to send someone to the actual event. But some of these smaller countries was really kind of, well, who wants to go? There wasn't a lot of competition. So you had some pretty wide variance of folks that were there. So I think that's a really interesting car, and that's a great event. And there you go. That's a tribute camel to make. The burned down journalist grilled cheese one. Yeah, we could probably
make that one out of yours.
Yeah, let's just make a grilled cheese in it, and then it would.
Was it a disco? Because I've got one in Spain that's a couple steps away from that.
I'm pretty sure it was a disco. I'm pretty sure it was. It was one of the discoveries. Yeah.
When I go back, I'm just going to make some grilled cheese in the.
Yeah, it could be very careful though. Very careful. They tend to catch fire. Yeah.
Let's hear what you want to. Let's hear your favorite of the year, Steve.
Okay. Well, my favorite is actually one that was featured on a great podcast, RoverTalk. If you haven't heard it, you really should. It was a car that was sold here in Los Angeles, a wood and picket Range Rover that was like, without question, the stupidest and most awesome car I have ever seen. I love
goosebumps. I love that. Love that one.
And it's funny because I was looking at it, and the same week you guys you put your show out, and you guys are talking about it, and just made me want it so much more. Because they're so different, and like it's really, and you guys talk about this, but it's really an acquired taste, right? Like you don't immediately look at one of those cars and say, "Oh wow, that's a massive improvement on the original." You look at it and you're not sure exactly what, but then you keep looking at it and you're like, "This is really cool." Like, you know what? I like the way they've done the dash, and I like the grill is, and you start just sort of falling in love with it. And then at some point you're like, I don't know, maybe I'm going to buy this thing. I don't know. And maybe I should. And then, and I didn't for whatever, I don't even know why. Cause what did that sell for, Dan? It wasn't a huge amount of money, was it? It wasn't.
I think it was in the 40s.
Yeah, it was in the 40s.
And do you think that's about what those cars are worth? I don't really know. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen another one for sale in that sort of venue. Maybe there's been one, but I don't remember.
The oddity is that that it actually made it to the States, for one.
Right.
And then the fact that no one even touched like the steering wheel or like staying in the car, which was just so bizarre that it came to us looking like that. And then in the UK, everybody knows what a wooden picket is in the UK. If you grew up in the 70s and 80s. And so it probably would have done just as well, if not better, over there. It's just weird that it was such a survivor that was actually in the States.
Yeah, it just made it over here. Yeah. And it's, I mean, and for anyone who hasn't seen, a wooden picket Range Rover, tons of pictures of them online. They did convertibles before there was a Range Rover convertible. They did six wheels for a little while. Is that right? Or they did a version of a six. I don't know if they did the six wheel or they took a six wheel and converted, but I like to describe them as like a 1980s like yacht, but Range Rover,
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
they have like a little cubby in the back for your Falcon.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Stick them in there.
Instead
of cup holders, it's got Falcon holders.
Falcon holders.
Yeah. And I don't know if this one actually sold, but there was also one that I don't remember. I don't remember where I saw it, but there was another original Range Rover Classic from the '83 that was a police surveillance vehicle.
Yes.
I don't know if you see a brown one with blacked out rear and all the radio equipment. Very inconspicuous, of course, to do surveillance in a classic Range Rover that's brown.
It's interesting. Yeah, there's been some weird cars sold. Another one that that I had a note about was, of course, the Camel Trophy truck. Speaking of Camel Trophy trucks, that was impounded by the Canadian government and recently sold. I think that only sold for did it sell? It was about around $18,000 or something last time I looked at it. I don't know what the final number for it was, but it was not. I mean, it wasn't $100,000. That's for sure. And we did find the guy who purchased it and the gentleman who's going to restore it for him. We've been in sort of light contact with those two, and would love to. We're trying to get them on the show to sort of talk about it more, because it's just such a, like, what a weird story that how did it, like, who knows how it ended up there, but I was chatting after it sold with our good buddy Will Hendrick, and he has any number of theories about maybe how it ended up there and how they were going to get it registered and all of this sort of stuff. But that was a little bit bizarre. Apparently it had been sitting there for like 3.5 years or something too, like just out in the yard, so long that you can actually see it on Google Earth or Google Maps. If you go to that scrapyard or whatever it is and you look at the Google, it's sitting there in the yard, like, that's not good. You don't want it to be outside long enough to get satellite photos.
Yeah, you can do a time lapse and you can see the buildings being built around it.
and the gutters and the Discovery just start to fold in on themselves. Yeah, that's never a good sign. Yeah, that's never a good sign. But hey, the best of luck to them to restoring it. That's a Japanese team car, really neat. Like it's cool to have a team car. It's great deal. Now you could probably put another $60,000 into that car, I imagine, and still come out, with a car that you could actually sell. Now, Dan, to your point, I don't think that's a car that's going to get, $150,000 or something, because it is going to need extensive restoration just to make it safe to be inside of. Forget about driving or registering it. But once that's done, I mean, that's really neat. It's a cool car. I think it's kind of neat.
Yeah, especially if they can track down a story to it. If you can actually track the timeline of everything that happened to it, then it might be a little bit higher value.
So cool. I mean, just so amazing. And even hopefully they're going to restore it and they're going to use it and they're going to love it. And maybe they could get those whoever those Japanese drivers are to sort of give them some backstory. It'd be fantastic. A neat project. It's a very cool project. So, what are some things looking forward? What are some cars that you guys think are the ones to watch in 23? What are some models that you think are getting hot, or maybe some specialty things that are coming up that you guys know about?
We have a betting pool going here at the shop as to exactly what date you will give up on the Freelander and sell it.
Oh, yeah. Can I get in on that pool? That's right.
Nope.
Yeah. We're gonna. Yeah, that's right. That's worth probably an internet. That's a Patreon special there for sure. Let everybody get in on that. My patience for absurd and expensive projects, it knows no bounds.
We'll see.
I think and I know this is maybe newer for you guys, but I still think the Mark II L322s is still going to continue to escalate in value. Recently, we've seen, and this just may be a bring a trailer anomaly, but like 405s are gaining in momentum as far as value there, especially the 2013s. And then, I'm always optimistic that series will, continue to, creep up. We've been kind of at that plateau where like good ones, they're all in that 30-40 range. And rarely does anything go above 50. So I'm hoping that
I'm gonna disagree with that, because I think and Steve and I have talked about this before. The really good cars almost never turn up online for sale. So the ones that you're seeing for like 50 grand are really just sort of the mediocre ones. Sort of the average ones are like 20 or 30. The medium ones are like, and I said medium and average, but the little bit better ones are 50, but they're really good cars. Usually trade between like friends and family members. You don't often see them actually turn up on Bring a Trailer. And that's one of the reasons I think that's skewed.
To your point, I would never I would never sell mine, because I don't think I'll ever find one that's as perfectly patinaed as mine. And they just, they don't show up, like you said, unless Ivan goes, I got a friend who's thinking about getting rid of, a series. You want to buy it. It's like, to me, a lot of times auction sites are unless you're a dealer, it's almost your last resort, unless you really think you're going to get a ton of money for your vehicle. It's almost a last resort. As Land Rover people, we all know people that are willing to pony up if it's a good Land Rover. You know what I mean? So,
that's right. Or it's a rare car, or it sort of fits a specific niche or something. Yeah, and and Ike and I have talked about it before. You sort of stalk the people that have the cars that you want 100%. As well. You're sort of. I know of a G4 Range Rover, for instance. That's a L223 Range Rover. That at some point I'll get that car. It's murder maybe, but hopefully not. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. But it, the cars that you want. You kind of know where they are, and you keep in touch with those people. And but it's it's one of those things, right, where you're sort of stalking. So what do you guys think? What's a model that is about to become a really hot car, but you could still get it right now at a reasonable amount? You could keep it for a few years. You could restore. You do whatever. And it's about to be something that is going to start really gaining in value
in the Land Rover family.
In the Land Rover, well, or otherwise. I mean, if this is the time to buy that Honda Pony, then good to know.
It's all the cars that Dan and Ivan are thinking about selling.
So where I'm seeing a lot of up and coming demand is in the Discoveries and Range Rovers that had the 300 TDI and the 5-speed manual. Keep in mind that there were 2-door discos and 4-door discos that had the 300 TDI, but that only started for the European market or rest of the world market in 94 with a version of the soft dash without airbags most of the time. And the same goes for the Range Rover. And the scope of these cars, the Range Rover Classic was only 94, 95, and a few 96s that were carried over while the P38, while people were still discovering that the P38, they hadn't had head gasket problems.
Quite yet. Haven't had them yet.
Haven't had them yet.
That was before they were made.
So those are cars that I think are attainable right now, but I think in 5, 6, 7 years, they're going to be worth a lot more because there's only two or 3 years. And especially one that doesn't seem to be super popular, or people aren't really picking up on it, which is the 2-door Discovery with 300 TDI and the 5-speed manual, which is
it's a great car,
fantastic car. It's got the R380. I mean, they're the look is still, even though there was a sort of a facelift from there was like an 89 to 94 looked a little bit different than 94 to 98. So it's still a Gen 1. In general, considered Gen 1. And I think those are, and the other thing I see more and more in higher prices for are Santanas, which I'm very fond of because I grew up in Spain.
Of course.
So I see more and more Santanas coming to the US. I see higher prices and I see, not only coming from Spain, but also coming from South America. So that's something that shows up in the market that I think if you don't want to pony up a whole lot of money for a really good UK solo series Rover, then for some reason the market it works a little bit different for Santanas. But
and they have some really interesting, sort of like the Series 4 and those sort of like where Solihull had sort of stopped series kind of development and kind of moved into starting to make 90s and then eventually Defenders and things. They have some really interesting transition models in the Santa, like those ones that are really different from from the same. From the contemporary Land Rovers are really neat. I have a couple of friends that have a few Santanas and that's sort of what they collect. And there are some really interesting models in there,
the Ligero, the 88,
those cars are ridiculously cool in person.
Yeah.
Those are the Ligero with the lightweight version. So while, later I was making lightweight and Minerva was making those in Belgium, Spain decided, we need to make one of those. So they just kind of adapted, and it's actually turned out really cool. Actually, in Spain, they've kind of become beach buggy cars. So you've seen them a lot on the coast, and all these like beach bars in the towns, they have them so that you don't have to drive yourself while you're drunk to the bar. So they just go to like the different spots and pick you up and take you from one bar to another. And they're actually pretty cool. I don't know if a lot of people, I'm like, you obviously know what they are. And of course you just, Steve and Dan, but I don't know if they're known enough. I think people might see them and probably ask, what is this?
What is that?
And,
what is that? Yeah. But that's cool. It's great to have a car that nobody knows what it is, and you can kind of tell them the story, and you sort of fill them in on, it's this thing. It's sort of this little transitional thing.
I've seen some social media posts, several different people posting the Santana 2000s too, which are kind of the wacky forward control variant. Those. They're kind of interesting. Yeah. They have just a huge panel, so like from the middle of the car back, it's like even longer than a 109 pickup panel because it's a cab forward design. And but it's a unibody. Most of the forward controls that were sold in the UK are like a cab with a bed on the back of it, and so they're separate pieces. But the Santana 2000 is like all one piece, like a fleet side that's like 5 miles long. Those things are so wacky. They're really interesting.
Yeah, you drive by that car for like 3.5 minutes. Yeah, I
want to see somebody import one of those. Those are neat.
Yeah, they're super cool.
Believe it or not, I was actually offered one about 3 weeks ago.
Oh, and wow.
The thing is, I can't even find anybody. I don't know much about that model per se. And of course, I don't want to get into what like Steve does, because I could very easily get into that and say, and then figure the rest out later.
I think you should.
Buy first and then sort it all out. You figure it out eventually. It's just keep stuffing them in there until there's one in there somewhere.
I do that more often than not.
Yeah,
but those are really, they're just really wacky. And I don't know if there's parts for them. I don't know what running gear they're actually, how they're built. Or it's very hard to find information on anything Santana. Because Santana didn't document anything. There's like no records are left of anything.
Not a lot. No. Right? But one thing that I like about them is that they're very rovery. They have that rover shape. The Ligero, it is not very rovery. It's all flat, faceted construction. And so when you look at it, you don't necessarily, sure, there's some Land Rover elements to it, but you could very easily see that being made by another manufacturer, but the Santana 2000, it incorporates all those, hips in the body work and galvanized cappings and the pickup cab and everything. It's just so Land Rover-y, unmistakable, but it's way different. It's like all the pieces got mixed up in a blender and it came out. It came out like the fly at the end of the transporter, like it's like, it's just a little wrong, but it's still kind of cool.
Yeah, but it's right. Yeah, but it feels right. Yeah, that's exactly right. No, I agree. So guys, what's in store for you guys in 2023? Have you got any interesting projects in the go? Any interesting trips? Are we going to find me a 2-door Range Rover in Spain?
Oh, I have one. I have a really good one. And
Mission
I'll tell you,
accomplished.
It's really good because I drove it for like 150 miles and it did not break down.
Well, there you go.
But it's gas. It's a 2-door gas. 5-speed manual. That's the thing.
Well, then it might be registrable in California. So there you go. Not that I would, but you could maybe. So yeah.
Well, I'll text you when it's here. It's Colorado.
Okay,
so
let me know. Let me know.
I'll let you know. I have a very good friend that runs a non-for-profit organization called Endure to Cure, and what they do is that they help and assist families that have children with cancer, and they give them not only assistance on, the regular things, but also navigating, the medical system. And they give them experiences, they'll take them, they have a box at Wrigley Field, and they want to kind of get you out of that cycle that a lot of people unfortunately have to go through in that. So I decided that there's an event called the Santana Trophy, which is run in Morocco for a week. Basically non-competitive, but very navigation based. And I've enlisted a friend of mine that runs a shop in Spain that does restorations. And we are going to run that in a 1982 Series 388 that's kind of got some weird Santana touches to it. Well, I'm sure we'll feature that.
Right on.
It's the Santana Trophy is designed to, basically they'll allow anything that is pre-1990 Series or Defender, 80, 90, whatever it is that you've got. And it's just a something done so that people can enjoy their Rovers in Morocco, which has always been kind of like the European playground for off-roading. So,
Cool.
I'll be running that in the end of April.
Worthy cause.
Yes. And of course, the objective of it is to survive.
Right.
One,
Don't die.
Maybe break down 2 or 3 times a day max.
Yeah. You keep it in the low teens and you'll be fine. Yeah.
Low teens.
Yeah.
And then we will bring the car back to Spain because obviously and we're going to ship it over here and probably either Cars and Bids or Bring a Trailer is going to auction it off, and everything that we can get from sponsorships to donations to whatever benefit comes from that car will go to Endure the Cure. So if anybody wants to help us out and donate, if you want to donate parts, you want to donate money, you want to donate directly to them, you want us to do some promotion of some sort, we're open to all sorts of ideas because it's all going in the same exact spot, which is this Endure the Cure.
That's fantastic. Well, let us, Ike and I, the Underpowered Hour, be the first to say we'll absolutely sponsor in some way. We're happy to help out. We'll at the very least get you a tiny Ike for the side of that thing, and
that's necessary.
Hopefully a lot more. Hopefully a lot more. Well, that's super cool, and looking very forward to hearing about that on your show, and certainly love to have you back to talk about that. And listen, it's been super fun sort of chatting about the market, and I think we should do this more often, unless this show gets 0 listens, in which case we'll never do this again. But I have a feeling it'll probably do okay. And so, maybe we should do this more often for sure. But thanks, guys, for your time. We really appreciate it. We appreciate your insight. And, we love your show. And certainly, if you haven't listened to Rover Talk, I can't understand why you're listening to the show and you haven't listened to Rover Talk. But if you haven't, for some reason, then please head over and download that show. Listen to it. It is fantastic. Dan and Ivan's knowledge on market of Land Rovers and the trips to Spain and, winterizing your car to drive it around in Chicago is absolutely without compare. And we really appreciate it. We appreciate, everything you guys do for the Land Rover podcasting universe.
Yes.
Well, thanks again, guys. Have a wonderful holiday season. Good luck prepping for the event. Dan, good luck winterizing all those cars. And you guys stay warm out there, and we'll hopefully talk to you very soon.
All right. Yes. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Happy holidays.
All right. Well, it's always great to talk to Ivan and Dan. I will probably have to buy that 2-door Range Rover from Ivan at some point. It's just how it is. I have a compulsion to purchase. It sounds like that car might run and drive properly though, which is sort of not really my style. I like to get something that is almost guaranteed to cost 15 times its purchase price in repairs immediately after I purchase it. That's sort of, if my collection has one theme, it's that.
I learned a lot in this episode, and I feel confident without any expertise to spend a lot of money online on a car that I've never seen before.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it just goes to show you that anytime you're online and you see something, it's, you get that, you get the fever. It's so easy to click. It's so easy to click. Yeah. And then the next thing you know, there's a Freelander in your driveway. So just, click responsibly. That's all we're saying.
Yeah. Support your local Land Rover shop. Buy online Land Rovers.
All right. Well, this is the first of what is a trio of Underpowered Hour holiday season episodes. We've got the Favorite Things episode coming out here in the next week or so, where we've all gone through and we've collected. Well, we're in the process of going through and collecting our favorite things. Linus, Jenna, Liza, you and I, we're all gonna make a list of our favorite things. And then of course we've got the holiday clip show. Well, Ike and Jenna are off in the desert. Liza and I are going to do a recap of all of our favorite shows, excerpts from the whole year. What a year it was. Holy moly, all kinds of crazy stuff.
Oh,
happens.
man. It's going to be like an advent calendar, and behind every door is just axle grease. It's going to be amazing.
It's just a nipple. It's just somebody's just standing back there waiting for you to, it was a trick. There's a nipple in there. Yeah, exactly. It's going to be great. So Well, I'm looking forward to it. Ike, hopefully your desert prep is going well, getting ready for the big trip. How's the Dormobile running? Is it all ready to go?
We've spent the last 2 weeks just getting the mildew smell out of the car from the last trip.
Probably 2 weeks more of mildew smell. 2 weeks more to go before that's basically where it is now. So yeah.
It's fine. It's just like every old camper, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we'll have to look forward to the recap of the big desert extravaganza in the new year. And all right, well, it's been a slice as always, and we'll catch you next week.
All right, see you soon. Bye.
The Underpowered Hour is produced by Liza Barris, Ike Goss, and me, Steve Barris. Pavel Svardov composed and performed our theme music. Consider supporting the show on Patreon, and if you already do, thank you. Your support makes the show possible. For even more, check out our Instagram or Facebook.